Pause. Hear that noise in your head. That running commentary that never sleeps. That's the trap. That's the prison. That's the voice grading your life in real time. Every choice, every silence, every breath on trial. You think it's you, but it isn't. It's the ghost of culture whispering its performance notes through your skull. And here's the reversal. Silence isn't nothing. Silence is everything you've been missing. Stay with me. You talk all the time, not always with your mouth, but inside, a relentless narrator, explaining, evaluating, predicting, replaying. Because of that, you almost never hear anything else. The mind loops on itself, a sealed circuit feeding you your own echo. You tell yourself stories about yourself and mistake the feedback for reality. But silence isn't absence, it's presence without commentary. It's the space where the whole world walks in. If you never stop speaking, you never truly listen. If you never stop thinking, you never truly see. Most people live inside a hum. Symbols, snapshots, slogans spinning in the skull. Thought turns to static, and you're no longer thinking about life. You're thinking about thinking. It's eating the menu and calling it dinner. Words are markers, not meals. And you've been chewing language instead of tasting experience. If you've ever tried to meditate and felt assaulted by your own mind, if you've ever switched off the music only to discover the noise kept going inside, if you've ever been terrified of silence because it felt too loud, this is not failure. It's exposure. You're meeting the machinery. The world has taught you to fear quiet because quiet unmasks. It strips away identity, performance, opinion, everything built on noise. It leaves you naked in the present moment. And most people would rather drown in distraction than meet themselves there. Scroll, swipe, refresh. We call it connection. But it's worship of the hum. We've built an entire civilization around escaping the stillness that would save us. The phone lights up, dopamine. The feed scrolls, comparison. Every click another spark in the echo chamber, a trillion little sounds saying, don't stop, don't feel, don't look. Yet underneath it all, something ancient still waits. The same awareness that existed before words, before language, before names. The space where everything begins. When you finally fall silent enough to feel it, you realize the commentary was never living your life. It was just narrating your absence from it. That's the beginning. The doorway opens not through achievement, but through a single interval of quiet, where the broadcast cuts out, and for one heartbeat, you're no longer an observer. Your existence itself, unfiltered. Because silence, when you stop running from it, isn't emptiness. It's the sound of everything that ever was, before you gave it names. If you've ever felt like your mind was too loud to hear your own life, you're not broken. You're just tuned to a frequency that never learned how to pause. But the pause is where the real world begins. There's a moment when thought runs out of breath. You know it. That second where the inner dialogue starts recycling, spitting back familiar phrases, old fears, yesterday's logic. It's not insight anymore. It's maintenance. The mind looping to remind itself it still exists. That's the threshold, the doorway, and almost everyone turns back right there. Because silence feels like dying, not to the body, but to the story of who you think you are. When the commentary stops, the illusion of control stops with it. and what's left feels too big to name. But here's the truth. The infinite isn't out there somewhere. It's right here, hiding in plain sight behind the noise. When the mental narration finally pauses, the world doesn't fade. It arrives. Colors sharpen. Sound deepens. The air hums with detail. Because for the first time, you're not listening about reality. You're listening to it. This is the silence people mistake for emptiness. But it isn't empty. It's full, almost overwhelmingly full, of things you were too distracted to notice. That's what Watts meant when he said, "When you stop naming the world, you start seeing it." Life was never hidden. You were just busy describing it. Every label divides what doesn't need dividing. Tree, sky, me, you. Concepts pretending to be boundaries. Remove the labels and the world starts to bleed back together. You realize everything is touching everything else, and you've been living behind glass the whole time. Neuroscience calls this the default mode network, the brain's constant storyteller, forever weaving the idea of I. Meditation isn't magic. It's what happens when that storyteller takes a breath. When this network quiets, something remarkable happens. Time collapses, identity loosens, and in the space between two thoughts, you glimpse what's real before your mind translates it. You see the world without subtitles, and it's indescribably clear. That's why silence feels both terrifying and magnetic. It's not the end of thinking. It's the beginning of seeing. The Zen masters knew this long before science did. A student once asked Yaku-san, "What is enlightenment?" He said, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." The student frowned. "But isn't that what everyone does?" Yaku-san smiled. "No. They think about eating. They dream of sleeping. They chew their thoughts instead of their food." We became experts at escape. Even in stillness, we flee, chewing past and future until the present disappears between bites. We call it productivity, progress, self-improvement. But at its core, it's avoidance, the mind terrified of its own quiet. Aristotle said the purpose of action was contemplation. Every movement meant to return you to being. But somewhere along the way, we got lost in motion. We started worshipping the next thing, the next fix, the next goal, the next version of ourselves that would finally be enough. Now we live inside an endless sprint, hamsters with diplomas, scrolling, achieving, polishing, calling it progress, while wondering why joy never arrives. The silence interrupts that wheel. It says, "Stop chasing. You're already here." If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Creation doesn't come from noise. It pours from the stillness beneath it. Every song, every sculpture, every sentence, born from a pause that dared to stay empty long enough to listen. That's what meditation is. Not escape, not ritual, just the art of remembering quiet. At first it feels unbearable. The body twitches, the mind throws sparks. Every cell screams, "Do something," and you think you've failed. But that discomfort isn't failure. It's withdrawal from stimulation. It's the nervous system detoxing from constant commentary. When the brain stops feeding on stimulation, it detoxes, it shakes, it begs for the old noise. But if you stay long enough, you start to hear what's beneath it. Every sound becomes music. Every shadow carries depth. Every breath feels like belonging. You realize the world was never silent. You were just too loud to hear it. For the first time, you don't have to figure life out. You just have to let it in. We built a culture that treats silence like failure. Every pause must be filled. Every stillness must be explained. But all creation, art, thought, music, invention, starts from quiet. Every symphony begins as silence that refused to rush itself. Every insight is born from the moment you stop pushing for one. That's why the Zen masters shaped stillness into art, raked sand until it looked like motion frozen in time, poured tea until steam became choreography. They weren't escaping the world. They were editing out the noise so the world could speak again. Because attention is creation. The act of noticing is meaning. You don't need to chase enlightenment. You just have to stop interrupting what's already speaking. When you stop chasing meaning, meaning starts finding you. If you've ever tried to meditate and felt like you failed, you didn't. You simply saw how addicted the mind is to its own voice. If you've ever felt guilty for doing nothing, for resting, breathing, or just being, that guilt isn't conscience, it's conditioning. A world addicted to motion taught you that stillness is waste. But it isn't. It's data. It's recalibration. It's where perception refines itself into clarity. When the noise finally dims, you remember. You were never separate from life. You were just too busy describing it to feel it. And in that moment, when you stop reaching, stop naming, stop performing, you meet the simplest truth there is. The world was never silent. You just never stopped talking long enough to hear it. And in that stillness, something ancient stirs, a sensation so clean it defies translation. You whisper, there, and everything that was separate isn't. D.T. Suzuki called it ordinary experience 2 inches off the ground, a moment so simple it feels supernatural, because the sacred and the daily were never apart. The awakened don't escape the world. They return to it, seeing it as if for the first time. They look into any face and meet the same light, the same awareness wearing a different mask, and that's the revelation silence gives you. That everything you thought was mundane is glowing. The infinite hides in the finite. The divine hides in detail. And the space you feared was empty is where everything begins. You start to notice it. The moment before thought returns. A thin vibration in the mind, like static before a signal. It's not silence, it's potential. That's what you've been missing. Not heaven, not enlightenment. Just the raw texture of reality before your brain edits it. When you stop narrating the world, you don't become spiritual, you become accurate. For a few seconds, everything makes sense without explanation. You feel the pulse behind things, the quiet geometry that was always there. And it's not mystical, it's mechanical. It's the physics of awareness finally unfiltered. Every leaf, every breath, every flicker of light on glass feels impossibly alive. Not because anything changed, but because you stopped covering it with words. This is what Alan Watts meant when he said, "Stop measuring days by degree of productivity and start experiencing them by degree of presence. Because existence doesn't need commentary to exist, it just is. And the second you stop talking over it, you realize you were never separate from it. The thinker and the thought dissolve into one motion. Like waves and water finally remembering they're made of the same thing. There's no cosmic revelation here. Just a clean, quiet realization. You are not inside reality. You are reality, noticing itself. We romanticize enlightenment like an ending. It isn't. It's subtraction. The moment you stop adding unnecessary noise, the disappearance of effort, you stop trying to hold experience, and it starts holding you. No halos, no fireworks, just the strange peace of not having to explain every second to yourself. You realize you were never looking for stillness. You were made of it. You were never chasing meaning. You were building it in real time with every breath. The world doesn't suddenly change colors. It just stops hiding. Look around. Everything you see, the screen, the light, the sound of your own breathing, is the universe processing itself through one vantage point called you. Not poetically, literally. Your eyes aren't windows, they're extensions of the field. Your thoughts aren't intrusions, they're weather systems passing through awareness. And when you see that, the fight ends. You stop needing a reason to exist, because existing is the reason. Meaning isn't found in grand answers. It's found in precision attention, in watching the dust in sunlight and realizing, this is it. Watts used to say, you are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself. That's not metaphor, that's physics. Your consciousness is what matter does when it starts to understand itself. And once you get that, really get it, you stop begging for purpose. Because purpose is what you're already doing. Being aware of being. You start to see how elegant it all is. The chaos, the grief, the noise, all of it. The friction that makes perception possible. You stop resenting the commentary and start smiling at it. Because even the mind's noise is part of the song. This isn't transcendence, it's realism, the purest kind. You finally understand that reality doesn't need your agreement to exist. It's been humming along just fine without your opinion. You can stop trying to fix life and start letting it move through you. The point was never control. It was contact. The space between two thoughts, the pause between two words, the way your chest rises when you stop needing the next thing. That's where life happens, in the intervals, in the negative space. If you understand this, you stop sprinting toward certainty. You stop asking, what am I supposed to do with my life? Because the question itself dissolves. There is no supposed to. There is only doing. And doing is already enough. You were never meant to find meaning. You were meant to realize you make it, every second, effortlessly by participating. When you eat, you are the act of nourishment. When you breathe, you are the event of life maintaining itself. When you watch light move, you are the awareness by which light exists at all. That's not philosophy. That's observation. And it's the most freeing thing you can ever know. If you've ever wondered why silence feels both terrifying and magnetic, it's because silence is the default setting. Everything else is commentary. You don't meditate to escape the world. You meditate to see it clearly again, without the filter of should. That's what Watts meant when he said, muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Leave it alone, leave yourself alone, and watch what returns. Not heaven, not enlightenment, just clarity. Just life, unedited, unnarrated, unrepeatable. When the mind goes quiet, reality begins to hum like a frequency you'd forgotten existed. You start to feel it, the low vibration under everything, like a heartbeat behind the world. That's not mystical. That's the sound of consciousness noticing itself again. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. You'll still think. You'll still plan, work, speak, strive. But beneath all that movement, something stays still. An unspoken knowing. This is it. No next version. No finish line. No better later. Just this, right now, enough to fill infinity. If this resonates with you, write it below. This moment is enough. Not as surrender, but as recognition. You don't have to chase what's already here. If you've ever wondered where peace hides, it's in that single instant between two thoughts. If you've ever searched for meaning, it's in the moment you stop looking. So breathe. Pause. Let the commentary fall silent. The noise doesn't define you. It was only ever proof that you were listening. And now, you finally are.